on part 3 of our 3-part series. So part 1, we talked about what is a precinct chair. We went over the general nuts and bolts. Part 2 was the roles and responsibilities, is how are you going to be successful. Part 3 tonight, we're going to talk about getting your name on the ballot. We'll talk about a little bit of the legal technicalities, talk about your campaign and tools to be successful. So you can be a powerful, successful precinct chair, both to get on the ballot and be successful to win. And you are going to get elected. And when you are a precinct chair, what kind of tools can you use to help change the world? That's what I like to say. So as you recall, we know a precinct chair is a change maker, and you are a connector. A good listener is going to make a successful precinct chair. And as we've been driving it home, a relationship builder. So with that said, I want to do a quick recap of our last couple of classes. We went over the party structure. It's really important to get to know who's who with the party. I wonder if anybody's done any homework and looked things up and maybe introduced themselves to people in their party. Election cycle. We really talked about the importance of the election cycle, because knowing the election cycle, now as precinct chairs, the more you know, the better you're prepared, but it's going to allow you to plug in better. You do have to know everything. No, in a campaign, people have different roles, responsibilities. The more you know that general structure, it's going to be ready to help with the prep and the go time. And then roles and responsibilities. We really lay down what's going to be the foundation for success here. Okay, so, and then the part 2, what we talked about was roles and responsibilities, a little bit more deeper dive. We dove in and we really talked about the hows, really laying it out in the prep work, and then laying out in go time into the GOTV and canvassing and getting out there in the community during election cycle. We talked about the really big importance of building relationships. And we also talked about why precinct chairs matter. They really, really, I hope at this point you're seeing how they hold up the structure of the party, and they are the superheroes. They're the unsung superheroes of the party. I keep giving you the analogy, back in the Kennedy days, the Chicago old boss days, the precinct chairs were like the community people, like, go see your precinct chair, go see Joe on the corner. And everybody knew who Joe was, you know? So this is where we're at. So again, I drive this point home. This is the setup of 3 phases of a campaign cycle. As you can see, as we've emphasized, there's a lot to do here. No one candidate and campaign can handle all these tasks, especially when we talk about down ballots. We know in 2020, Indiana got killed in down ballots, and a lot of it had to do with preparation. And it's not the candidate's fault. It's not necessarily just the state party's fault. We got to work together. We got to build this up together. And we know there is a lot of holes thus far, and we're working to close that. Okay. And it's relation building. So don't get intimidated about any of these, like, oh, there's so much here. This is relationship building. So I cannot stress this enough. Okay. Tonight, the new stuff. Okay. So we're going to talk about qualifications. We're going to talk about the actual filing. We're going to talk about, you are on the ballot. So what next? What do you do? Because the filing happens in January. The election's not till May. What do you do until then? Tools to make you successful. We have a special guest. Her name is Gabriella. She's back in Boston. She's worked on the Elizabeth Warren campaign when Joe Kennedy vacated his seat with Jesse Morrell. And now she's working on the mayoral campaigns in Boston. I happen to know her really well because she's my daughter. So she's got the political bug too. So she'll give us a live tutorial on these apps. And then we're going to really drive home what I call the last mile, because all this work is for nothing if we don't house it somewhere and make it accessible so we can use it when it comes to be campaign time. Okay, so let's get rolling. So let's dive into the qualifications. At any point, if you have any questions, because there's a lot of exceptions sometimes, because as we discussed in the beginning part, someone asked about appointments, please pause. Deb and I can field those questions. These are the areas where we want to get everybody on the same page. Okay, you have to be a qualified voter that's 18 years or older. Check, that's easy. Okay. Reside in the precincts which you are a candidate. This is to officially run on the ballot. We know, as it stands now, if I look at St. Joseph County, there are people who are appointed precinct chairs who do not live in the precinct they are representing, but they are in the county. And that's okay if they're appointed by the chair. That is different from being actually elected on the ballot. Appointment, election, 2 different things. What we're talking about right now here is elections. Okay, next one. Technical difficulties. Okay, most recent primary vote was cast in the Democratic Party. What does that mean? So you need to have cast a vote in the primary in 2020, and some will go back to the 2018 too. Why is that? They want to verify that you are actually a Democrat. Now, you're probably wondering, uh-oh, you moved. That could be a scenario. That scenario happened to me. I am new to Indiana and I have moved. Does that mean I cannot be a precinct chair? No, it doesn't. The county chair can certify that I'm a Democrat, and then I can still run. So that's another area to kind of get around. So if you're somebody that's also hasn't been involved in politics and you're stepping up, this is the relationship time you need to get into with your county chair to certify that you are a Democrat. We had that question come up last time, and there I just want to make sure there's clarity on that. And then a candidate cannot be disqualified if they have not been previously voted in a primary. I want to drill that point home, because some people can say, well, I didn't vote, and that's kind of circulating around there that you didn't vote in the last election. Doesn't mean you're disqualified. You just have to go through some additional hoops. Okay, I want to pause there. Is there any questions? And that's when I get to take a sip. Are there any questions on any of these qualifications? This is to be elected and appointed, elected, not appointed. Questions? Okay, cool. Okay, we're good. Okay, now it's time to file. Okay, what does that mean? Okay, you've got to do the due diligence. You got to fill out the paperwork. Okay, so you have to look for a file form, declare your candidacy. It's called Can Form 37. Deb's going to drop in the chat right now on the Indiana state site where you can go and find the form. It's listed, it's buried, it's in numerical order. It's buried in there for state delegate. It's the same form for Republican and Democrats, so don't get confused. The filing opening date no earlier than January 5th and no later than noon on February 4th. That is when you have to file to be eligible for a precinct chair. 5th to 4th. Okay, there's some other qualifications. You need to be a registered voter at the same address as on the form. So if you know right now that you have moved and you were registered to the last election cycle at a different address, change your registration. They need to talk to each other. They need to be the same. Okay. The other thing, you have to sign in front of a notary with a wet signature. What does that mean? It's a live signature, old school paper and pen, no e-documents or anything like that. We have to use an old school wet signature. So you can't send it off to be notarized and then bring it back or go to the bank. And a lot of banks have them, whatever. It has to be live and in person. You have to hand deliver the document to the county clerk. This is not mailed in. Okay. And finally, but last, precinct chairs. Once you become precinct chairs, we're living in positivity here, you appoint your vice chair of a differing gender. So if I'm a female and I get elected, I appoint a male. It's to keep the equity there in our democratic system here. Any questions about that before I slide over to what happens if there's vacancies and there are appointments? All good, guys? Every 4 years, if you were appointed, I want to make this super clear. If you were appointed to a precinct chair and you're right now, if you want to continue your duties and you want to get more and more involved, which we hope you do, you have to get your name on the ballot and you have to run again. Okay, it's clean slate. Okay, county chair, they're the one.
Mary?
Yeah.
Mary, this is Heidi Beidinger. Can I ask a question?
Sure.
What if two people file for the same precinct chair spot?
Then that's an election. Then you will have an election just like you do in a regular election. So if we want the old and the new going head to head, that's what happens. If you have a neighbor, best person win.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yep. Okay, good question. Any more before we go over to how appointments came to be? Okay, cool. Okay, county chair, whoops, I don't know why that came up. Okay, county chairs, they will appoint people. They will fill a vacancy. Somebody might move out of town. You will see someone, God forbid, unfortunately, there has been people have passed away. Things happen, life happens. They fill vacancies. And when you're appointed, you don't have to reside in the precinct, but I think I mentioned before, you can live in the county, okay? And then a precinct chair appoints the VC if both seats are vacant of a differing gender. What I do know, which was shared with me, that we have quite a few of vacancies in St. Joseph County and across the state. What we want to do this election cycle, as we've learned and really drove home, and I really demonstrated and painted the picture that We're the backbone of the party here, and we need these seats filled to be a strong candidates moving forward. Any questions about this stuff? Any questions? Okay, really cool. Okay, you're on the ballot now. What's next? Because you're running. Here we go. We're off to the races, as my grandfather used to say, off to the races. Okay, you're on the ballot. What next? Take note, put it in your computer, whatever place you put a sticky on your desk, whatever, go get the voter file. You are on the ballot. You have the right and the ability to go get the voter file. Walk yourself over to the voter registration office. It's usually attached to the courthouses in these counties. Go get the registration file, the voter file. You are eligible for it. You can have it. Why do you want that? You want that because you want to get everybody, you want to know who's in your precinct so you can inform them that you're actually running. Okay, so that's the number one thing you're first going to do once you file. Walk the filing paper over and then go get that voter file. Okay, so now you've got the file in your hand, and what's next? This is the fun part. You get to announce to your community, I'm going to break these down, that you're running, create a social media presence, and really think about what is your why. Why are you doing this? It's really important because people will ask you. And if you have your elevator pitch ready, it's a lot easier. So I want to take a moment. So before we announce the community, step back and think about what your why is. I like to give a moment of quiet time. And I'd love someone to volunteer what you've been thinking about, why you're showing up here. If someone asked you, why are you running for precinct chair? What would you share? Show of hands. Deb, I can't see all the squares. If anybody wants to just popcorn in, I'm totally cool with that. Anybody? Bueller, where's my Ferris Bueller people?
So we can just pop in here? Is that what I heard?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so my why is so that I can be a part of the feedback to our party about what the constituents want to see in a candidate.
Excellent. That is awesome. That is awesome. Exactly. That is really, really good. Thank you for sharing. Anybody else?
Go ahead, Suzette.
Talking off the top of my head here, I am new to the community, and I want to know what I can do to strengthen my area. And I think I can do that by communicating with those people of like mind and maybe helping some others jump in my boat.
Absolutely. Yes. Connections. I hear connection there. Thank you. Okay. Somebody else. I heard another person pipe in. Please share.
I think mine is similar to, I think it was Denise, that to let people know that they have a voice and that we're not unheard in our community. We're just as important as somebody else. I want to help them get their voice out.
Absolutely. Okay, great. Those are awesome shares, and thank you. Keep that in the back of your mind because it's going to energize you as we move forward. Okay, so next.
Mary, I will just say in the chat, a few people have said a couple of things.
Perfect.
Joe says he's tired of too many elected positions having no alternative than Republicans. And of course, a big role of precinct chairs is to help recruit candidates. So that's great. And then Cameron says to have more people that actually take action in the community that are precinct committee chairs.
Awesome.
So another good reason.
Yes. And to piggyback on that comments in the chat, I went and double checked the numbers. In the House last year, we had 17 uncontested Republicans sit idle on the ticket and nobody contested them. 17, we just said, here you go. I mean, if you really think about that, we can do better. That's what we're here to do the work for. Okay, so how do you announce the community? What's some good strategies around that? Have a party. Have some people over to your house. Make a social out of it. Why do you want to do that? You want to have fun with this. And secondly, when you have people over, you can tell them your why, talk about things you're learning, and also recruit volunteers, recruit other people, get a team together. This is not something you have to do alone. Write an editorial in your local paper. Excuse me, we're going to talk about social media, but there's another demographic, and there's people that read that local paper every day or the weekly paper. You pick which one that's more impactful for your community. Write an editorial. Social media announcement, create a social media. We're going to talk about that in a minute. Create a social media announcement, create a social media page, make it the hub of the information. I highly recommending send an email to your close group of friends with an email announcement. That kind of helps you build a network of supporters who want to work with you and say, hey, I never thought of doing that. I want to help you. Okay. And then the other thing, remember I told you to go get that voter file? It has addresses on it. Write a letter to the constituents and let them know that you're running. And a lot of times I've heard it from other candidates. I voted for you because you just asked and you told me what you stood for and what you wanted to get accomplished during the next 4 years. I never even knew my precinct chair. I never knew there was one in the community. The fact that you're making the effort will go 100 times over compared to what there's empty seats and people not doing anything. So these are some really successful strategies you can use.
Can I get a little something there, Mary? Just
Sure.
about the voter records that you'll get from the voter registration office at the county courthouse. They can send it to you as an Excel. Sometimes it's done well, sometimes it's not. I know in my county for a long time, if you got it, they put all of the information into one field. So you couldn't like sort by anything. So you had to like really retype the whole thing. But the information that is really valuable is the voter history. So you can see on each line, the person who voted, and you can see in the previous primary elections, which ballot they pulled. So you'll see some that are just, hard Ds. Always a D, always a Democratic ballot in a primary, some that are mixed. So, so you'll be able to reach out to people who, who have not always voted Democrat too. So that's it's a really good tool for a lot of things, and besides just getting addresses. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of good tools on there.
Awesome. Really good points. Okay. Create a social media presence. Before I go over this, social media is a really valuable tool. You can create the hub. I'm going to go over some of the things. I'm just going over very briefly. At the end of this discussion, I'm going to drop in another link in the chat. One of our partner organizations that we work with is Building Bridges, and I have teamed up with them, and we do a 2-part series on Facebook activists to change maker. And we kind of go over how to properly set up your social media and use it to your advantage. Facebook. Actually, on Monday night, we have part 2, which is just actually setting up and going through those things. So that's other things that are out there to help you navigate this. But let's go over the outline here. Create an official Facebook page. I say turn on 2-factor safety parameters there. The reason for that is just so nobody can hack into it. When I say official Facebook page, what I mean by that, I mean, don't put the stuff on your personal page. It really is really nice. You're creating a hub of information too, and you want to keep your personal from what you're up to here in the community separate. And when you go and you set up your Facebook page, you will have the question of, do I do a group? Do I do a public group? Do I do a page? That's why we have that other tutorial that you can jump into. But my advice is you either do a group that's public or you do a page. I personally prefer a page because you have more shareable things with it, and you can get more tools and access to insights. What do I mean by insights? If you're posting something at 5 o'clock, you can look and see how many people saw it. Oh, wow, my community really looks at Facebook in the morning. I need to shift my posts, stuff like that. So again, I just talked about the access to tools and page insights and availability to advertise. If you want to go down that route, you really need to think about what kind of page you set up in social media. It is a pain in the neck. Deb and I have gone through it if you have to change it afterwards. So please take a step back. If you were really super excited to get started now, I can set you up. I can help you out. Drop, at the end of this, let us know. But just know that people run into problems with Facebook because they didn't set up the page properly. Okay. To clearly define your purpose, your why. Maybe you have a logo, you put your county logo on there, you pick some colors, you pick the Indiana colors, you pick something that's relevant to your community, and you create a look and feel. You put your name, your why, the county website, really define why you're there. It's really important not to just throw up a Facebook page and people click on it and they don't know why you're there. Another thing you want to do is have people, and when you're setting it up, you can assign a few people to have administrative roles to help you manage your Facebook page. Really helpful. And then Use Mobilize. I'll talk about that in detail in a little bit. It's free. I highly recommend using that when you're doing some virtual events for your community, as opposed to using Facebook events. I'll go over that a little later. The other thing in setting up your Facebook page, it's really helpful too, to create what we call, go into the settings and create a vanity URL. So your Facebook page, instead of having all those numbers and dots and letters and funny icons, you can actually have your Facebook page say your name, Precinct Chair from X, Y, and D district. So when people look for you on Google, it comes right up. So those are some simple tips to really make your Facebook presence a little bit more interactive and more visible. Okay, a couple other things. In terms of, now you're into you set it up, you want to do some posting. Really use an authentic voice, really use your own personality. If you have a little cheekiness to it, be a little cheeky. If you are very straightforward, whatever you decide, it's just be you on there. It's really important that you try to find a way to post 4 to 5 times a week, because if you don't, the Facebook algorithms won't pick up your posts and people won't see them, regardless you're public, private, or in a group. How do you do that? You can schedule your Facebook posts out. If you know you have a bunch of meetings coming out and you want them to go out a certain time of day, you can go in Facebook and schedule them, and then you're done for the week, okay? Set Google Alerts for your issues. We've talked about this before. Google Alerts allows you to have emails come into your inbox about important issues that you want to filter back out to your community. For example, redistricting. I probably have, with redistricting going on right now, every newspaper in Indiana is coming into my inbox right now for those who are talking about redistricting. So I can see the comments, the quotes, whatever the politicians are saying, and I can have it right there and I'm not searching for it. So Google Alerts is a really awesome tool. Another reason why it's really awesome tool is you can turn around and do what we call boosted news technique. What is that? You see something in the newspaper about redistricting because you set your Google Alerts, you opened your inbox, there it is. You know it's an important issue in your community. You copy and paste the link, you drop it into your Facebook, you quote from the article something pivotal, something impactful that your community needs to know, and boom, you're sharing it right there with your community. Boosted news techniques really galvanizes people in 2 ways. They get the truth, they're not getting the wrong information. And 2, by them clicking on really good news sources, it allows them to, their algorithms to pick up some good news sources. So it's really a good technique. The second thing is, if you're trying to get involved in your community about the issues that matter to them, what to share with the candidates, read the comment sections in your social media posts, the sentiments. If you see an article that gets a lot of reaction, ask yourself why. Ask your community, poll them, find out what's going on. Okay, that's a little bit about social media. Do I have any questions about that? Yes.
I'll add a little thing. So the other thing I will say about your page or your group is to make sure that you join Democratic Party groups.
Yes, good point.
You know, as that group, and like and follow Democratic Party pages, so that you're really connecting with your county Democratic Party, and whatever events they're having, as well as candidate pages who are running in your precinct.
Cool. Awesome. Okay. And there's some questions in the chat. Deb, do you see any questions there? Would you recommend taking time on the weekends or some nights to really set out at least 4 or 5 posts for your upcoming week? Yes. Because basically in the marketing world, what we do is you're posting 4 to 5 times a week, and people get used to habits, and they know that Monday morning, the precinct chair is going to lay out the events for the week, and to go there. So there are some things that that can stay on a schedule. And then there's other stuff that we call rapid response that you put out there that's the need to know in the moment. So there's 2 different types of posts. So scheduling things in advance, yes, it's not a bad thing to do. It's actually helpful, cuts down your to-do list. Any other questions? Good questions. Am I missing any questions?
And also you would want to try to get your constituents in your precinct to like your page or join your group if you decide to do a group one.
Yes. And keep in mind too, you might find somebody in your group who loves social media, and you could pass off that duty to somebody else, because you don't have to do everything. You're just setting up the table here, and then you want to bring in other people to help you. Okay, cool. Okay, goals of messaging. I'm going to just go over some quick goals, things to keep in mind when you're messaging out there. Okay, and basically, Because when you're showing up in your community, your insights into who you are, your values, your experience, how you show up is going to be important. Remember, we say to any candidates that are running for office, before you declare, scrub your social media. You just want to make sure what you're saying represents you. So just be a little word to the wise there. The other thing is, you're motivating people, you're recruiting people on social media, you're persuading them to get involved. And the number one thing you always want to do on any post you have is what we call call to action. Come show up here, like this post, sign this petition. You want to get people involved. What you don't want to fall in the trap to do is, yes, you're an information hub, but you always want to follow up with something to do so you can get more people involved. Really super important. Educate on local issues in the community, in your state, but it's really relevant. It's really important to always try to find a way to tie it back to your community. Because if you're just talking about the stuff that's going on in the national political scene, it just becomes noise, okay? For example, this is not noise. We know what's happening in Texas. We know that our legislator will cookie cut the reproductive rights and the abortion law that Texas just passed and pivot it into our state house. That is important national stuff to connect back to us. So just posting about Texas, okay, you want people to connect the dots. You have to do that for you sometimes. Okay, and finally, when you're on social media, you are going to become the resource hub, and people will start asking you questions. And those people that ask you questions, recruit them in and help them do the research with you, okay? Any questions about goals of messaging? How are we doing on time? Oh, great time. Okay, cool, moving on. Okay, now we're into the fun stuff. So you've been doing all the work. You've been doing everything for the last couple of months. You're in action. You're really, you're on the ballot. You've won your seat. Now you need to know how to be successful precinct chair. Remember, 75% of it's relationship building, and then the GOTV time, I call go time, and you're educating your community. So I want to take a minute and step back, because everything that we've been talking about kind of lands here. Because we've been collecting, pretend like you're a super duper rock star precinct chair. You've been collecting names, addresses, phone numbers. You truly understand your precinct. You know who lives there. Your team has had numerous conversations with people about the issues. You have a handle on your community. But when it comes time for a campaign to get activated, if you didn't put that information somewhere, if it's not accessible, it's not easy to compile, it was for naught. So we really want to talk about how you organizing all that, because where are you going to house this data? And when I say data, I'm kind of not referring to numbers. I'm referring to issue-based concerns. I'm talking about emails, addresses, contact information, because at the end of the day, your job is to, when it comes to go time, is to get people registered to vote, educate on the issues, and go time, GOTV. And the way we can do that is if we've been doing all that work previously, and when the candidate comes in town, they can put all that information together, know who's left to has to be registered to vote. How are we going to educate on the issues and make a plan for GOTV time? But if they don't have all that information, all the work that you've been doing, it's like they have to start 10 weeks behind. And I truly mean 10 weeks behind. And we have a campaign season coming up, and it's going to be short because of redistricting. So before I get started, any questions so far before we kind of get into some of the tools that we can use? Oh, good.
I do have an observation, Mary.
Sure.
I'm wondering, from the reading, my understanding was that the candidate and the county officers create that GOTV plan. Are you hearing something different than that?
No, that's really, they do, but they need to know from you what's going on in the ground to make a strategic GOTV plan. If they make a GOTV plan and it doesn't align with your community, where say they have a plan and they didn't calculate for 5 apartment buildings in the district, and they don't have people that are going to go there, they only sent 2 people to hit 5 apartment buildings, that's not going to work. So you stepping up and saying, hey, that block, we need 10 people over there because that block is not laid out how you think it is. That data you have is incorrect. And that's what we've seen happen to candidates. You need a team of 10, not 2 people to go over there to canvass.
I would say in my experience, I've not, there's been very few county party organizations who have, done any well-planned get out the vote effort. I have done my own in many different places, and candidates often are doing their own as well. So, so it will take precinct committee chairs to be creative and persistent, to have good, and get out the vote is tough, and
Yeah.
it's tough. It's
Yeah.
it's a tough nut to crack.
Right.
So-
In every district, rural town, community, suburban town, city, they're all different. You can't have one plan that is going to get married and implemented across the state. And that's what this will show here when you start getting into the work of precinct chair work. Any questions? Any more questions? Great question, Mary. Thank you. Okay, moving along. Okay, the tools. Okay, before I go into the tools, I want to just take one, like I'm kind of tying all the loose ends and everything's putting the bows on here. So the way I broke down the tools is relationship building tools, get out the vote tools, and then education tools. Now, at the end of the day, any tool that we use as candidates, as campaign organizers, as grassroots organizers, your ultimate goal in the business world, we call it CRM. It's a data management acronym, customer relationship management. You've heard of Salesforce. The business world use that. We're using the same philosophy here in the voter world. And there's a couple things that need to happen, regardless of what tools you use or choose to use in your county or county uses. You have to ask the one pivotal question. Your ultimate goal is to get that information into the voter file. And the way they do that here in Indiana and across the Democratic Party is they use VAN. If you're using a tool that is not compatible or makes you jump through 5 different exports and ways to get it into VAN, really talk to your county chair and county people. We're not going to use this. You really got to take a stand on that, because again, it goes back to you did all this work for nothing. You can't export it into the voter file into VAN, and the candidates don't have access to the information, and all that work was for nothing. I think I've kind of drive that point home. Okay.
Are you saying VAN, ban?
Yes, VAN. Yep.
Thank you.
Yep, Vote Builder. Vote Builder is a nonpartisan company out there, and they work with Democrats and Republicans, and they take the voter file and they build on it. They've created their own voter file because they have acknowledged that voter files out there stink, and they build on existing voter files. You will see campaigns and people using that. They've done their research and they feel that's the route they need to go for whatever reason. Now, Gabrielle is going to talk about Reach. These are field canvassing tools. Reach is an app. Open Field is an app. Universe is an app, but Universe is also a huge platform, and we'll talk about that later. Now, what's really good about Reach and Open Field and Universe is it's pre-work apps. They really set it up so if you're on a bus and you find somebody you want to talk to, you can get their information and you don't have to have a cut list or cut terms, okay? So a lot of campaigns will use them prep work, and they'll use them during a campaign too, but it's really good for prep work. Now, Minivan, all us across the state here in Indiana have access to Minivan because it's an app through VAN. It is usually used door-to-door canvassing when the campaign arrives and they're cutting turfs, and hopefully there's enough data in there and they're giving you lists and they're going out to do the door-to-door knocking, okay? So this is the relationship builder. Map the Vote. I want to take a pause on this because everybody's using Map the Vote right now. I have nothing against it. It's a great app. One thing I want to tell you about it, this kind of drives the point home about doing the work, but knowing what's happening with the information. So Map the Vote is a free interface, okay? You can go online, set up an account, and put in your address. If I put in my address here, I can find out what neighbors across my neighborhood here are registered to vote. If they're not registered to vote, I can do some canvassing and go out and ask them door knocking to see if they want to register to vote. Okay, wow, that's awesome. But here's the big but. If you don't sign up with Map the Vote and pay for their services, you won't get that information back directly in the moment to know you walked up to Susie Smith's house at 5 Beacon Street to register her to vote. Why is that important? She's a new person in your voter universe, and you want to keep track of her so you know to bring her into your persuasion, education, all that good stuff. If Map the Vote, if you don't have a way to keep track of who you're registering to vote, you use it as a free tool, you need to figure out how you're going to keep track of it. because the voter registration goes off to the state, circles around to Van, and maybe comes back to you 3 months later. Are you really going to keep track of it that way? Probably not. I just want to put that out there that when we use these apps, we have to keep track of the work we're doing and make sure they can either A, talk to Van in an export fashion, or B, you've got a backup system. Any questions on any of these? We're going to have a live demo, not a live demo, but Gabrielle's going to go through the apps in a few minutes with Reach and Minivan. But before we go on, any questions? Anything in the chat, Deb?
To say no.
Okay, cool. Okay,
No questions.
Mobilize. I forgot, I need to talk about Mobilize. This is my point that I add this because it's really important talking about now. Okay, I'm using Mobilize to have you guys sign up for these things. Why are we doing that? The reason is Mobilize is because we've become very virtual due to COVID. And it's also been very successful in hindsight because we can train easier, we can recruit more people to get and volunteer, we can have virtual events, we can have movie nights together and talk about issues and really get organized and get volunteers. Now, what's really key, this is where you in the know is going to share back with your county captain, your county chairs, is Mobilize has been purchased by Van. They talk to each other. Okay. So what you want to do is if you can have a free account as a grassroots organizer with Mobilize, you can just go online, sign up. That way people can sign up for your open house you might have at the community center. Why is that important? You're getting people's names and contact information so you recruit them to volunteer. Now, because the state has Mobilize and the state has Van, you can get what we call a Van IP key. It's just a code. It's a code to say this computer talk to this computer. Really simple. And when you look at, when you're setting up Mobilize, it just says in the settings, enter your Van key. And it's just a code. So anytime, so it's another way to enrich that database. So when the candidate comes to town, they can say, wow, look at all these volunteers that showed up for these trainings. I wonder if they want to canvass. So you don't have to be the person to do all this, but knowing how all these systems work, you can ask the questions. You won't remember all this, but knowing that these things can talk to each other is super helpful. Any questions on that before I do move on to the next one? Okay, cool. Let me just go on to the next technical. Okay, again, I've got these highlighted because we're going to have a little demo in a minute. Okay, again, next, GOTV, voter registration. I talked about Map the Vote, why I like it and why there's a little bit of a hiccup in it. You can get around it. You just need to be conscious of it. Open Field. Open Field is another new great app. Open Field is actually built by some women. Yay for the techie coders for women who help build Nation Builder. And so what they've done is they've created that app where you can do that canvassing and get out there and find out how people feel about the issues. You can also register people in the moment. And you can also, they've left fields that if you're in a conversation with somebody and they say, my number 2 issues are healthcare and education, you can put that in there. So now you have more information about that voter that enriches that voter file we talked about, which you can get back up and sync up with Van. Candidate comes to town, they say, this community really cares about X. So that's another tool that's out there. You don't have to know how to all these tools, but I'm just letting you know that when it comes time, ways to communicate with people to get them to the polls, there's Text Magic, there's Through Call, there's Call Hub, there family texting messages, they're peer-to-peer texting, they're friends and family calling. We've all used them, not all of us, but we've used them during the election cycle. And a lot of them are accessible through Van, which I stress again that these county chairs already have access to. One thing I will say about texting, the millennials, which we have some on the show here, are really used to texting. But the 3 sisters out of Philadelphia, they're a data organization. They're actually a bunch of women who like the data. And after the election last cycle, because we went so virtual, people went back and looked and see what was successful and what was not. One thing to caution campaigns about texting is really good for what we call a call to action, asking people to do one simple thing. Voter registration ends today. Make sure you go to the county office to do X, Y, and Z. Don't forget to show up to the rally here at the town hall for the guest speaker. It's really successful for those types of communications. When you start getting into texting for persuasion and asking people how they think about something, people die down, they lose interest. Once they lose interest, they say, do not text me again, and you cannot by law, and you lose them. So it's really important that if a campaign says, let's find out how the community feels through texting, really advise against it, because people opt out more than they actually engage. It's just a food for thought, something to throw out there. Phone banking, another thing you can do through Van. Digital, we talked about social media and targeted emails, because we have new email addresses and we know how the community, who's in our community. We can use MailChimp. Some campaigns we use MailChimp. Easy export option. You can take those files, those people you're communicating with into Van to communicate with them with the campaign afterwards. Really simple. And then finally, but not last but not least, social media. We've talked about that, and there's great creative ways to use social media to get people out into the voting realm. Okay, last but not least, educating your community. Facebook, we talked about that, and there's going to be other trainings that you can really get up to speed, how to use Facebook in a powerful way. Google Alerts, I've mentioned that before. I cannot stress, it makes your life so much easier. Set it up on the topics that matter to your community. Boosted news, I mentioned that before. The key thing is you're breaking up people's algorithms and you're having them read something that's really relevant and a reputable news source. And another great source is the National Democratic Training Committee from the DNC, has a lot of great virtual trainings. If you want to learn how to use Van, sit down and train. You can train yourself. It's not hard. And you can watch a slideshow, practice, whatever you want to do. You can do a lot of these things on your own time at your pace in terms of your own learnings. And Canva. What is Canva? Canva.com. Free, accessible, easy graphic design templates. Why is that important? When you're posting on social media, Twitter, Instagram, more so on Instagram and Facebook especially, if you post a graphic, it is seen 10 times more than if you just put a little blurb to come to this rally. Pick 4 or 5 that you constantly use. People recognize them. It's a trigger for you to actually know that, oh, that's the precinct chair, Susie. She posted it. I needed to look because I saw the logo again. I saw the county logo. If you keep doing things in repetition, it really helps. So those are some tools and some tips and tricks on how to educate your community. And now I want to pass it off to Gabriella, our special guest. And she's going to talk about the apps and how to use them and when to use them and all that good stuff. So Gabriella, I'm going to pass it over to you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Gabriella Finocchio. Just to give a brief introduction about myself, I'm a student at Boston University. I've interned for a congressional campaign, and I'm currently working for an organization here in Boston called Act on Mass. We work on improving transparency in the Massachusetts State House. And as of late, I've also been volunteering for the ongoing Boston municipal elections. We have our preliminary next week, and been doing that with our local chapter of the Sunrise Movement. So today I'm going to talk you through 2 pieces of campaign technology that you can use to talk to voters in your neighborhood as a precinct chair, and it will make your life a lot easier. Next slide, please. All right, so the first app is Reach. So this is something that you can use for year-round organizing before the campaign arrives. This app was, no, not yet.
Oh, sorry.
So this app was developed for Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's first campaign back in 2018. Her team created this because her district over in New York, it's tricky to canvass in the traditional way. You have a lot of really big apartment buildings that sometimes people can't get into, or, it might be an area where it's more productive to stand at a subway station than go door to door. And that's something that Reach allows you to do. So when you first get access to Reach, it's something that you'd probably get access to through your county. So if you can click to the first. So when you're setting up Reach, you can import or create your own questions of what you want to ask. So this visual is just an example from a city council campaign that I have been working with. And so they've, put in their campaign questions of, do you support the candidate? Will you volunteer for the campaign? But you can put whatever you want in there. You can put, open-ended questions where you can write notes, you can put in different issues that people care about, things like that. You can really make it your own. One of the second feature, if you could click to the next box, that Reach is a lot of campaigns, especially will use Reach for, is importing your contacts and doing, the fancy term for it is called relational organizing, but it's really just talking to your friends about upcoming elections. So here you can see a photo where I've imported a contact who lives in the district of this city council candidate. And you can basically, the app will kind of walk you through, or you can set it up so that you can send certain messages to different people. You can organize them by friends, coworkers, acquaintances. There's a lot of flexibility with it, and it allows you to do that relational organizing and use those relationships that you've been building to your advantage. And then the next slide. Yeah, so the last kind of big piece about it, big thing that is very useful about it, is that you can actually search for voters in your area. So you can search people by name or location. And this is a great way to, if you are at an event or you are in a public space or you're kind of in any random situation where you're talking to folks about voting and you want to record this information. This is, you can look up their name, see where they live, if they live in the precinct, and you'll basically pull up all your questions and you can input all that information right there. So you don't have to have a preformed list of who you're talking to. You can just kind of talk to anybody that's in your universe. And all of this is stuff you can do before the campaign actually gets there. And then the cool thing about Reach is that if the campaign that you're, say a campaign comes in, and if they are also using Reach, or if you can export the Reach data to other, to Van and all that kind of stuff. But if the campaign is also using Reach, not all of them will, but some will, you can share, you can link up different campaigns in Reach so that you can share data in real time. So when it comes to GeoTV, you can use Reach in conjunction with other apps like Minivan, which I'll talk about in a minute. But it becomes really useful to constantly be sharing that data with the campaign. And so if we go to the next slide. So the next thing that I'm going to briefly explain is Minivan. If you have canvassed for a campaign before, this might be familiar, but this is the primary tool that campaigns use for door-to-door canvassing. It's a lot simpler than Reach. It's pretty, only has one main feature, but that makes it super easy to learn. And when a campaign gets there, campaigns will probably have you doing things like canvas launches and training other volunteers on things like Minivan. That's a great role for a precinct chair that is, super involved in the community and is very, if you know how to use these tools, that's really helpful for the organizers and to kind of take some of that work off their plate. So using Minivan is pretty simple. If you could click to the first thing. So basically you just get list numbers from the campaign. So they will have, it's I think something like 13-digit number. And each person gets a list number and you type it in there. And this basically will pull up a list of which doors you're going to, who you're talking to, and a little bit of information about them. If we could click to the next box. So then when you pull it up, I don't have a photo of it, but you can pull up a map of where you're supposed to go. So you can see, you'll have a Google map and then little pins on all the houses that you have to talk to people. And so when you click on the pin and it pulls up the house, you'll see the person's name, a little bit of information about them, and then the script that the campaign has uploaded into Van. So you can basically just kind of review the script before you go to a door. You can input the answers to any questions right in the app. And then every once in a while, you just sync Minivan and it goes straight back to the campaign's van database. And then the other thing that is kind of a bit of a limitation with Minivan that Reach is great for is that, say you go to, we have Jack here, you go to Jack's house and the person answers the door and says, oh, Jack doesn't live here anymore, I just moved here. But the person that you talk to isn't on your list. So if they aren't on your Minivan list, you can go over to Reach, look up the address that you're standing at and say, oh, is this person, registered to vote at this house? Do we have their information? And if it is there, you can just click on that person, add their data in Reach, and then that'll eventually go back to the campaign. And then even if they aren't on that list in Reach, if you see that little plus button in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen there in the Reach screenshot, that actually lets you add people to the universe in Reach. So it basically just adds another person and then allows the campaign to follow up with them, even if they're not in the voter file that's in van. And that stays in the Reach universe and allows the campaign to keep talking with them. So yeah, that's basically a brief overview of those two apps. Those are the ones that I have the most experience with, are pretty popular with campaigns here. And yeah, I'd be happy to answer any questions if folks have them.
Cool. Q&A, here we go. Anybody have any questions? I'm gonna stop screen sharing so I can see all your faces. Either drop your questions in the chat or you can just raise your hand to the icons at the bottom. But if anybody has any questions, we kind of went over a lot. We showed you the tools. We're wrapping up where we've been, where we've gone, and what's possible. So questions.
I have another comment.
Yeah.
I'm full of comments, but I just want to mention that I encourage people who run for precinct committee chair to also run for delegate to the Democratic Party convention that's held, every 2 years, and it'll be in 2022. And you use the same form, the CAN 37 that you use to file to run for precinct committee chair is the same form that you use to run for a convention delegate. But you have to use two separate pieces of paper. So, and often not as many people run for a convention delegate as there are spaces. So it's not usually even an issue, you can go. And of course, the convention delegate is where the Democratic Party develops and votes on the platform for the Democratic Party in Indiana. And, and it's a raucous good time. So I encourage everyone to do it.
Cool. Really good point. Really good point. Any other questions out there?
So we got a couple in the chat box here. So what's the best way to reach out? Oh, so Mary says, so that's email Mary is the answer to that. If you want to get the video, email Mary at IndianaWAM.org. I thought the platform is wood or metal. What does that mean? What did I miss?
Yeah,
what does that mean? Okay, Cameron, explain yourself. Like whether the platform is wood or metal. Oh gosh, Cameron. Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, it's really, I will say the whole platform thing. So there's about 2,300 delegates that go to the convention, and I had a raucous time in 2018, and caused a little trouble with our Democratic women's group from LaPorte County, and but it was very exciting, and so yeah, Don was there, and and it was very exciting, and it was great. It felt like you really had a voice, even though in the end we really didn't. But anyway, it was fun.
Question, will there be refreshers and updates, right, in regards to this training, or can you clarify? Denise, feel free to jump in.
Denise says, yes.
Yes, in regards to this training, in regards to using the van, and then follow up once we've all won our precinct committeeman positions?
Good question. If there's, I will be following up with people. And if you feel that when you get into your roles, that's what we're here for. If you reach out, hey, we need to get together, we need to have a training on X, Y, and Z. We can do that. That's what we're here for. We're here to educate everybody together, because the more we are collectively educated on these issues, we can be ready for when candidates get ready to roll.
And I would hope that we or the Democratic parties would facilitate a network for precinct committee chairs, so that everyone has an opportunity, you know, every couple of weeks or every week to be on a Zoom call and just tell each other what you're doing in your precinct, what's working, what's not working, ask questions. You know, that would be so helpful, I think, to precinct committee chairs. And if the party doesn't do it, then we certainly will. But for sure, the party will be doing some training, at least about VAN and those sort of things.
Yeah, I agree. Yep. I find too, some of their, it's hard because I did mention the DNC. The DNC is a great place to start for some of these trainings, but some of them are very 360 overview. That's the best way to describe it. And sometimes you want more details, and that's where we can kind of step in and provide some more details.
So there's a question too, is Map the Vote an app or a web page?
It's an app.
I have not used it.
From what I've heard, from what I've used it in South Bend, and for people who've used it more down in the 8th on a more larger scale canvassing, they say it's about 50% accuracy so far. So they're cross-referencing postal addresses, old voter data, and that's what they're coming up with.
This is Beth, and I asked that question. And I'm not seeing that on the Apple Store.
The app, you're not seeing on the Apple Store.
Yeah, just Google Map the Vote. I'm sure you'll
Oh
find
yeah,
it.
it's not on the Apple Store. You have to download through the website. Good question. Thank you for.
Okay, that's why I said I had found it on the web, but I didn't see it
Yes.
as an app.
No, it's too, for some odd reason, I think it's proprietary. We've had to Google Maps. They use Google Maps, and they have to do it on the website because of what you're bringing in. But good question. Thank you for clarifying.
So someone mentioned Cameron's excellent Facebook page. And Cameron, can you put the link in the chat? And then Mary says, Mary Cooey says, I submitted that request to Johnson County PC meetings. Oh, and that's the networking idea, right? Yeah. So good. Oh yeah, Johnson County. Yeah, one of our great candidates from last year. I was so proud of our candidates. Many of them stepped up and took positions in the Democratic Party. Like Mary said, one of the big lessons that I learned last year was that the Democratic Party structure was very weak, particularly at the grassroots level. So there's 5,176 precincts in this state, and probably about half of them do not even have precinct chairs. And so our candidates found out, you know, in a terrible way, that precinct committee chairs were not there. They did not know things. They didn't know how to help them, you know. So this is why this is so important. And I can tell you from my experience, you know, if we could get great people like all of you to be precinct committee chairs, we could really change the outcomes for the Democratic Party. This is such a gap, a huge gaping chasm in the Democratic Party, and this could really make a difference. So, that's why we're really working hard on this and really hoping people will run and really want to be there to support people and teach people how to be a great precinct committee chair.
Okay.
And so our candidates, one of Angela Elliott is in Johnson County, and she was one of our candidates, and she stepped up. Now she's I think she's the treasurer or the secretary for the Johnson County Democratic Party. So I know she knows firsthand how important this is.
Yeah, she's the treasurer for the county.
Okay, good. Yeah, and she's you know, super smart and great and super committed.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, cool. Do you two have groups to join that you've suggested? Do we have groups to join?
Do you mean Facebook groups or? Yes, Facebook groups. So yeah, there are, I think, you should try to be mindful when you are curating your friend group and your groups that you're members of, so that it's efficient for you. So you want to join groups that you're going to want to share stuff to. And so you don't want to just join any group, because when you go to share it, then you're going to like scroll through all those, that list of groups, and then pick that one to share something to. So, try to be efficient, try to make sure that you're, staying within your precinct. So, the county that you're in, the county chair groups, often counties have a Democratic Party, then they have a Democratic club, then they have maybe another city in the county Democratic club, then they have a women's Democratic club. So, and then they'll have a progressive Democratic club. So you'll want to make sure that you get all of them, but you do want to stay within your county and, within your thing, if possible.
Beth has got a really good question, and I'm going to answer it publicly. Can I get a list of the current, you're looking for the current precinct chairs in your county from the state? And she lives in, what county are you in? Du Bois. Now, if you look on the Facebook, if you go to websites online for various counties across our state, you will find it very hard to find a list of precinct chairs. Floyd County is actually the only one in the state that actually publishes that list right on their website. It isn't open. They're like, you should know who your precinct chairs are. There has been debates, for lack of a better word, to put it politely, going back and forth, whether to make these lists public or not, because some people don't want others to know that they're precinct chairs. I'm going to be really honest with you, Rod. If you're an elected official, I should be able to contact you. End of discussion. But some people don't want to be known for whatever reason. So I guess in my opinion, if you don't want to be known, if you're going to be a precinct chair, you're there to serve the community, people need to reach out to you. Maybe this is not the right position for you. So to answer your question, Beth, yes and no. The state will not give it to you. Can your county give it to you? Yes. Keep knocking on that door. Keep knocking. Monroe County publishes their precinct list.
All the time,
Wonderful.
yep.
Thank you, Regina. Yay for Monroe
I
County.
will say that is, I swear, the only county that does that. I mean,
Floyd has it.
It's because of you superpower women down there in Monroe County. That's why.
Yep, and they knock on a lot of doors. I do know that I have a list for St. Joseph County because people were running, and that's a list ended up in my inbox. So
you can get a list from so there are election results. So if there is an election and people run for that precinct committee position, then that does show up on the election results. But if those people are appointed, then the county chair owns that list. And in fact, at the convention, when I was there, and every single time somebody brings that up and says, we want to change the rules so that county chairs have to publish those lists, and it always gets voted down.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate.
It's unfortunate. Now, I will say this, that there's been truth to this, that we've had so many open seats, and we're trying to fill the seats where people have just randomly appointed. Oh, by the way, George, I appointed you as vice chair, precinct chair, because George, so-and-so, this, Peter wants George to vote for X, Y, and Z person for county chair. So they need to fill the open seats for vote purposes. So they throw people's name on the list. And I will say that does happen. And when that does happen, then you've got somebody on the list. Well, Peter, who put George on the list, says, well, I don't want to make this public. George was just doing me a favor. Well, I get that, but don't put him on the list. So there's this, what I'm saying, and I'm sharing that story for you, is we got to clean up and really talk about the importance of precinct chairs, so we don't have those issues and we don't have those obstacles. Let's get at the root of the problem. The root of the issue is we need people to run for precinct chair who want to be there, who want to commit to their communities and make change, and are willing to be known in their communities, so we don't have this issues that have some validity to them, but they got there in the roundabout way. I think that's kind of answers the question. So let's solve that root of the problem, and let's get people involved who really want to make change. There's my soapbox for tonight. Any other questions? I guess that's it. That's all I have for you guys. Oh, feedback forms, you've been getting them. Love the feedback. Thank you. Appreciate it. And then we will be running another series. I keep looking at my whiteboard over here. I will send out an email to everybody and asking you to share it with people that you think might be interested. And if you miss one of the sessions, yes, they are recorded. Request the recordings from me. Other than that, we'll be running the same exact training on October 6th, 13th, and 20th. Those are Wednesday nights. We're going to try to do a different night of the week so people have different schedules. And we'll be running those from 8 to 9 o'clock. We're trying to do after kid hours so people, have the kids in bed. It's a little easier for people to sit down and have some time to themselves. So hopefully that will work for other people, and please spread the word that we will be continuing this, and we'll do another one right before the holiday and then try to squeeze one in December. So there's some time, but it's getting close.
Just another note, if you want to save the chat, if someone doesn't know how to do that, there's the tiny little 3 dots if you open the chat box, there'll be tiny 3 little dots, and you click on those and there'll be an option to save the chat so you can keep those links and stuff.
Yeah.
So be careful where it goes. Sometimes it's like you can't figure out where it got saved to.
Yeah,
So.
it usually goes in a Zoom file in your download. So look for Zoom, download Zooms. It's right in there. Cool. Any final questions? We're here to help. I think we're good. Thanks for joining us, friends from Michigan up the street. Have a great night, everybody. Have a great weekend. I hope there was a lot of info. The PDF. Give us a call. Let us know how you're doing.
Hey, I have a comment I'd like to make if possible. Just
Sure.
doesn't have anything to do with precincts, but I do want to put the word out. Women United for Progress Allen County is putting together a bus to go to Washington for the Women's March on the 1st of October through the 3rd. If you're interested, my name is Karen O'Dowd. I'm actually facilitating this whole crazy event. We already have hotels. We're just trying to get enough people for a bus. So if you're interested in attending, please let me know as soon as possible. Hotel.
Can you put your email in the chat?
Yep, I will do that right now. I just want to make sure that anybody who's interested in going to the Women's March has that information.
You women over there are great. You're
We gotta
awesome.
do this.
Awesome.
We gotta
What an
do this.
awesome group you have over there.
Yes. Do you have any kind of Facebook advertisement we can put on our Facebook page, on the social media channels?
So I don't know if you're aware, we're the Wolf Pack. It's called Women United for Progress Allen County. And on the main page there, all the information, it's called Wolf Pack Goes to Washington. So I put my email address in there. If you're interested, contact me directly and we'll get it all going.
Yes. Awesome. This is exciting. Okay, I think this is gonna, everything happens for a reason. A lot of people and a lot of the analysts say Texas did themselves a wrong. They went too far. You reap what you sow. Just saying, there's a lot of fired up women on. I've got a couple emails today. What do I do to run? I was like, okay, let me set you up. Enough's enough. And a lot of other men who are supporting the issues too, because it's stripping away the constitutional rights the way it's being laid out. Okay, thanks everybody. I really appreciate it. Let's keep in touch. Again, once you get on the ballot, maybe this group and the groups that we're forming the trainings with, this will be our network. And if that's so be it, let's do it. We're going to create change. So have a great night, everybody.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks for coming. Bye now.
Have fun storming the castle.
I know, right? Bye, everybody.
All right.
I think I just like to wait till everybody's out. Did you eat yet?
Who, me?
Yeah, you.
Yeah, I had some food. I'm good. I'm fine. So, okay, great job, Mary. You're awesome.
Okay, thank you. Let me know. I hope it went okay.
Oh, I think it was great. I think you did a great job. So great, a lot of good attendance. So, that's pretty good. It's 22 people, I think, right?
Yeah, I think we had about 77, 78 signed up, but you never know,
So I think a third, like in politics, that's kind
It
of the
is.
thing. It's like a third of the people who say they're going to go show up.
Yep.
That's a good marker. So, All right, great. All right, get some rest. I'm sure you're kind of relieved to just, relax now for a while.
Okay, talk to you later.
Okay, bye.
Bye.